I've paid thousands of dollars in courses to learn what you're basically teaching on your podcast for free. What you're putting out there is so valuable. So, I just really want to acknowledge you, and I definitely send everyone to your podcast.
You were virtually one of the first mentors that I looked up to and started following. You're always one step ahead of the game. So I just wanted to give you kudos and props for that, because lots of people are watching, lots of people are learning from it.
Tucker and the whole TTM crew, Dan and Chris, thanks so much for your support. I love what you guys do, and a huge fan. Having this support's huge. So I'm grateful for that.
What's up, everybody out there in listener land? This is episode 290 of the Real Dealz podcast. And as always, I am your host, Tucker Merrihew. I want to thank you guys for joining me for what will be another really awesome episode. You guys are going to like this one. I have a very special surprise for you. Now, before we get into what this show is, let me give you a little background on it. So about 6 years ago, I had just started to do this show. Previous to that, I'd done a handful of bigger shows. There was only 3 or 4 that were around, and I went on them all. And a number of you guys that were early listeners of the show probably found me on some of those other shows first and then kind of made your way to this show. Well, one of those individuals that found me was a fellow by the name of Danny O'Bannon. And Danny was up in the Spokane area, and he was having some trouble, we'll say, in this business. He had done the business, he had done some deals, and he'd hit a little rough patch. He needed to get a job again in order to pay the bills, and he wanted to get out of the job, get back to full-time, but kind of fix what had gone wrong previously so that he didn't have to go back and get a job again. Well, he reached out to me, and we had this little thing that many of you guys who may have listened to the show for a long period of time remember. It was called the Spokane Project, and it was basically me taking him under our wing here and kind of showing him how we do the business and how he should adopt some of that in his area up in Spokane. Now, I put it on the show. It was all, completely forthright in terms of where we were at, what we were doing, how he was doing. And I had no idea whether or not it was going to work or not. I only knew that he had some serious drive to make it work. So I only could hope that then that drive would, translate into success and ultimately get him out of his job that he'd gotten in a cubicle that he says that he loved so much, and back into the world of full-time real estate investor. Well, if you listen to the show, you know that he eventually made his way back out of that job, had some great success. Once we kind of redirected him, gave him some advice, gave him some tips and tricks, kind of helped him with his marketing, and got him back on course. And here we are today, 6 years later, after we did the whole Spokane project and he kind of got up and rolling again. There's been a big gap in between him getting up and rolling again and being able to leave his job to where we are at today. And today's show, we're going to kind of connect the dots, which is important. But on top of that, we're going to dive into what his business has now become, which it's a beast. It's a big business. There's a lot of people involved in it, a lot of different team members, a lot of different facets, a lot of different ways that it makes revenue or makes money, we should say. A few things that I found interesting is that, he has a renovation division, he has an Airbnb division, he has a listing leads division, he has a cold calling division, and all kinds of things. And the renovation division actually buys property from the wholesale company with an assignment fee to help pay for things. And then he does all kinds of different things with marketing, from direct mail to RVMs to text messages to cold calling. I think that's about all the stuff we talked about, but it's a very interesting model, and it's one that I know appeals to a lot of people right now. And I mentioned this in last week's show, that the mantra out there right now is scale, scale, scale. And for the right people, it's the right decision. For the wrong people, it's not the right decision. So you have to know if that's what you want personally. And for him, it's what he wants. And he's doing a fantastic job at it. And that was really my point in last week's show, is just make sure it's what you want. And so for him, this is exactly what he wanted to do, and now he's actually put the rubber to the road, and he's made it happen. And he was kind enough to come on the show this week. We kind of walked a little bit down memory lane, but then he also pulled back the curtain, and he said, here's exactly what we're doing right now. Here's the different markets we're in. Here's the different type of marketing that we're doing. Here's how the team is structured. Here's what everybody does. Here's how we generate leads. Here's how the leads are passed off, and here's how they're turned into deals, and here's the kind of money that we're making from it, right? So all the important stuff that, you guys want to hear when you come to the Real Dealz podcast, so you can get the real deals on what exactly people are doing, how it's working, and how much money they are making. So without further ado, I'm not going to give you a whole preamble on this one in terms of what's going on with me and all kinds of other stuff, because this is a long interview, but it's an awesome interview, and it's one that I know you guys are going to enjoy. A lot of golden nuggets sprinkled within this. He was going to share a little bit of stuff. I asked some prodding questions that got him to share probably a little more than he would have otherwise. Not that he didn't want to, but I asked some questions that interested me, and I'm sure that they will interest you guys out there in listener land as well. So without further ado, I want to welcome Danny O'Bannon to the show. You guys kick back, enjoy, drive in your car, whatever it is that you're doing. Make sure you have a notepad and paper nearby, though, because there's a lot of golden nuggets to get dropped on this one. So enjoy, and I'll see you on the flip side. All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did. All right, everybody out there in listener land, welcome back. I've got a great interview for you guys this week, one that I will say is 6 years in the making, or thereabouts anyway. Kind of give you a little framing here on where we're going and who I'm talking to, which you probably know already. But about 6 years ago, there was this guy in Spokane who reached out to me and he said, man, this business has kicked my ass. I've gone back and gotten a job that I really don't want to have, but I needed to. Can you fix me? Or at least point me in the right direction? That'd probably be a better way to put it. And I said, all right, let's see what we can do. And I kind of put myself out there on the show to help somebody, because I've helped a lot of people over the years. Some people can help themselves, some people can't. That's just the reality of it. Fortunately, you were one of those people that can help yourself. And so you made me look a lot smarter than I really am. But without further ado, welcome to the show, Mr. Danny O'Bannon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's kind of crazy. I was trying to think how long it's been since we started this whole thing. So 6 years. Wow, that's crazy.
So let's walk back down memory lane real quick here. 6 years ago, when we first started chatting and we kind of were looking into what you were doing and trying to get you transitioned back into this business full time, maybe let everybody know kind of what it was like, where you were at, what your situation was, and then we can kind of move forward from there.
Yeah, so in 2012, I had started this business while I was in college and just started trying to wholesale. And at that point, all I knew was to send yellow letters to absentee owners. So that's all I was doing. And, at that time, you could kind of get away with that to a certain extent, right? We didn't have the competition that we have now. And so that first year, I did about eight or nine deals, got a little cocky, and I thought, all right, this ninth deal I'm going to take down myself and do as a rehab. And I just assumed that I would just keep getting wholesale deals and that would pay for the rehab. I really had no money to pay for it, but I just figured I'd make it work. And so what I found was, you take on a rehab, you have no team, you just kind of stop marketing, you stop sourcing deals, and you're at the job site swinging a hammer, tearing out carpet. So your focus is off. And so I got to this point where all my money was tied up in this rehab and I wasn't really doing any more wholesale deals. And so that's when, I was pretty strapped for cash, and, I was listening to some podcasts and I came across yours. And then, I came across you on another podcast being interviewed, and then you started your own, and that's when I reached out to you. But at that point, I had graduated college and had to go get a job, a cubicle, held desk. I mean, literally sitting there for, 8-9 hours a day, just staring at a computer. And so that's when we started, working together. And so I would go to work at 7 in the morning. I would get off at 3:30 in the afternoon. I would spend the rest of my day all the way into the evening just doing exactly what you told me to do to try to get myself back into to real estate full time.
It's funny. There's a video we did together that a lot of people within the DFA have watched, and it was when I was first looking at like where you were trying to find deals, and I was like, dude, get out of the hood. Like, what are you doing over there? And it's funny that 6 years later, that video is probably that piece of content resonates with people more than anything else. But looking back, I think that was probably a pivotal point too for you in terms of like, okay, I'm an investor, so I think I've got to be cheap and in these certain areas. And I think as you started to pivot there, that's when ultimately I think you started getting traction again and you started getting better deals and kind of worked your way out of that job.
Yeah. I mean, it literally only took 3 months of working with you and just kind of doing the stuff that you told me to do. And yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I was getting in those 3 months, the deals that I got were in A+ neighborhoods, right? And so I was able to wholesale them for top dollar, and they sold, right away. And so within the first 3 months, I had made, I think it was, $75,000 just wholesaling, which was more than double my annual salary there. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm taking the leap of faith again, quit the job, and was, back at real estate full time.
Don't you wish it was that easy still?
I know, right? Times have changed. I always say, I wish I knew then what I know now, because we would just be cleaning house,
Yeah, it was, it really didn't take much back then, looking back, you just had to have kind of pointed in the right direction would be a good way to put it, right? And if you just did something pointed in the right direction, you got traction and ultimately you got deals. Now, the world of real estate investing has changed dramatically in a lot of ways. So you've got to be much more refined in what you do, but we'll get into that here shortly. But so take us along that journey. Then you started to get some traction again. You went back into doing this full time. I'm sure that journey had, some ups and downs along the way and ultimately allowed you to grow into what you are now. But maybe let's continue that journey and talk about how you got from there to here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it hasn't been all, sunshine throughout the whole time. I mean, so I went back full time and started building out the wholesale business, continued doing rehab. So I would do, both essentially. Everything went, smoothly. I never, I certainly had tight times, but I was always able to do really well. But for a good period of time, I really just was a one-man show. I kind of didn't really see the value or didn't really have a desire to bring on a big team. I still kind of had in my mind that I could just work when I wanted to work and still do, decent money. And I kind of did that up until, last year. Up until last year, I was a one-man show, and I still was able to produce, 7 figures by myself. But I got to a point where, I wanted to start building out a rental portfolio. I wanted to start doing some different stuff. And when you're so busy just doing acquisitions and then doing dispositions and handling the marketing, like you can only do, so much. And so after that, I started, really it was April of last year that I really decided, okay, I'm gonna really try to build this thing and scale it. And so from there, I started trying to hire employees, which I made, just a ton of mistakes. Like the first, person that would fog a mirror, I would basically hire, So I've had to hire and fire a few people, but through that, taking that action, you learn a lot, and you learn what to look for, and you learn what to look for each type of role, what personality fits each type of role. And so, last year, like I said, I just kind of made a decision like, all right, I'm going to scale this thing. I'm going to hire some people, and I'm either going to be really successful or I'm just going to completely fail and fall on my face. And I think I even said that to you at the time. And I think I even remember your response. You said something like, success favors the bold or something like that. So I think you'll be okay. But I honestly felt that way. I felt like, okay, at this point, I'm going all in. Like I'm going to do whatever I can to scale this and, be the top wholesaler in the nation. But more than anything, I wanted to remove myself from the wholesale. Like I wanted the wholesale company to run and function, without me doing everything so that I could go off and do some other stuff, get into some other niches. And so that's been my goal. So we can kind of jump into that, the process of where I started building that. But, last year started hiring some people, had to fire, a couple people. And that was tough because you would take, you'd take 5 steps forward and you would take 10 steps back, every single time. And you just felt like you were really just spinning your wheels in the mud. But so come this year, January, I made another hire for acquisition, and that honestly was one of my best hires up to that point. The guy's an absolute stud, and I kind of knew. So what I did with him is, I gave him a chance. I gave him a trial period, like the first 3 weeks, and he kept his job, and he'd come in and he'd work with me for those 3 weeks, and then I was like, okay, and then I really gave him a chance. But what I was looking for is I wanted to see if he was going to be coachable because he's older than me. And I've had a tough time dealing with people.
How old is he? Out of curiosity.
He's 44.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm 29, and I've hired somebody older than me before, and they didn't want to listen. They weren't coachable, So I was really apprehensive about bringing him on, but thankfully I did. And I could tell, after the first month, I could tell, okay, this guy's going to be better than I ever was if he can just learn a few more things. And he's a killer now. So he does really well in ACT. And then from there, I had somebody reach out to me. So what I did to bring some people on is I think this is a good tip, is I sent out an email saying that we're hiring and what the position was for, but I sent it out to my buyers list. Just asked them if they knew anybody, if they could refer me. And through that, one of the investors that I had met just once, briefly, he actually reached out to me and he said, hey, and I know you're hiring for acquisition. I'd love to apply. And, he was an engineer, right? Super smart, super analytical. And I could tell, I was like, hey, I probably would never hire you for ACT, but I do have a role that I would consider you for. And at the time, I was really trying to get to a point because all I'd ever really done up to this point was slung mud at the wall and just see what sticks, right? Like I didn't have any numbers. I saw the bank account, and as long as we were going up over time, like that was happy, right? But I wanted to get to a point where we were tracking, which marketing system was working, which channel was working, which maybe we weren't making that much money on, and we could take those funds and move to another one. And so I brought him on, and my goal was so I started him as operations manager, and the goal was to groom him into be the COO. And that turned out to be an amazing hire. The guy's, being an engineer, his brain, so right now he handles all our systems. He handles all our numbers, tracking our KPIs. He helped me build out our cold call marketing channel. And he's been a huge, huge asset. And so the goal is to have him eventually be the COO and kind of run the company, run the day-to-day. So those are the first 2 hires that I've had. I had some hires before that are still with me. But in terms of scaling, those are the first 2 that I started with that have really changed things for me.
Okay, so the first one, just to kind of clarify for everybody, was an acquisitions person.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you probably hired somebody before that didn't work out, hence why you were a little apprehensive to, maybe bring that guy on. Although I think that, the silver lining on that guy is he was older than you, which usually means they've gotten a lot of the partying out of their system and they're a little bit more reliable. They need something solid. And so if you give them a good opportunity, they'll take and run with it. I have found that, and I hired a lot of young blockhead dipshits over the years myself too. And a couple of them almost took me down when I had my mortgage company because they did so many dumb things. But when you hire somebody slightly older, the dynamic is definitely strange when you're younger as the boss. But after a certain point, it becomes normal, right? When you're an adult, you're an adult, and a few years apart really doesn't mean much once you start to get to be 30, 40, whatever. It really doesn't. And it sounds like that gap is no longer, evident in terms of your guys' interactions or just, how you see each other.
Yeah.
So then acquisitions was first. Then COO essentially, or somebody who you were going to bring on to kind of dial in your systems. That was the second major hire.
Yeah, major. I should preface, I already had an office manager / TC on board, and I had somebody else that was helping with the follow-up on board. So, and those were family members. Those are both my sisters. So I already had them on board, but in terms of really trying to scale, those were the first 2 hires. And then what we do now, so we have, the first hire, Jeff, he's a senior ACT, so his job is to make the offers, close the deals. But we also brought on a junior acquisition, and their job is to do all the follow-up. And so when a lead comes in, say it's a cold call lead, the senior will make the call. Those are new untouched leads, direct mail, bandit signs, cold call, whatever we're doing. PPC. Those are new untouched leads when they first come in. So the seniors, will make that first phone call. But if they don't get them on the phone, they put them into the discovery bin in our CRM. And discovery is basically, we're still trying to discover what this lead is, right? And so right now we probably have, 400 or 500 leads in discovery. Well, the junior act's job is to call through those all day long, right? They're doing all their follow-up. So they call those, they find out, is it somebody that wants to sell? And if it is, they tee that up. They do a live transfer to our senior, and the senior will go in and try to close them at that point. So from there, I hired a junior. Since then, I promoted him to senior. So I have 2 senior acts, and then I hired another junior. So I have 2 seniors and 1 junior act right now.
Gotcha. So then just to kind of break it down, because this has been something that, for our business, we don't necessarily need it, but it's definitely been a point of difficulty, right? Once you get to a certain point of lead flow, doing what your senior acquisitions person does and also doing what your junior acquisitions person does, it's difficult for one person to do it all. Did you get to that point? Is that why you decided to hire somebody then to kind of do the continual follow-up, the exploratory period, we'll call it, with leads?
It is, yeah. I mean, we're getting about 8 leads a day. We're in 4 markets now. So for a senior to be able to capitalize on all the new leads that are coming in, I mean, you're spending a lot of money to get those new leads. And so, but of course, we all know that the fortune is in the follow-up, right? And so it might take, 10, 15 calls from a lead that came in 3 months ago that we're now closing on today. And so we kind of had to figure out, where's that line of, the seniors, they need to be following up, but they also have all these new leads coming in. And so that's how we, adjusted to that to make sure that we're still following up, but we're still tackling those leads that are coming in right now.
The other thing you said that's interesting to me is the live transfer. So basically, the junior act guy tees them up, gets them comfortable talking to you guys. Is that basically their job? And then do they go in for price or anything like that? Or do they hold that, hand the phone to the senior guy, and then he does his tap dance, whatever it is, takes them through his, conversation in order to extract price out of them or whatever other information you need in order to present an offer?
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's tough. So before we had live transfer capabilities, the junior would spend so much energy and effort to get these people on the phone, that just to even highlight how much effort it is. So what we ended up doing is we even hooked up our discovery bin, our CRM. It's linked to a dialer now. And so she's calling 5 numbers at once and calling that bin, probably each person 3 or 4 times a day because it's hooked up to a dialer. So that's how many times we make phone calls in there just to start teeing stuff up. But what we found was she would tee somebody up. Great. Let me have my partner give you a call back. You hang up the phone, and then it's like he couldn't ever get him on the phone again. And then they're back in discovery trying to figure out what's going on. And so we changed up our phone system. And so now that we can live transfer, it's just like that incremental shift or the incremental change in everything that we do that just gives us a little bit more of an advantage. And so by live transferring, we can keep them on the phone and just smooth, that transition to the seniors a little bit more smoother by doing that. So,
yeah, that's why I bring it up, because sometimes when we get people off the phone for whatever reason, we can never get them back on. And so it's a pivotal point in the cycle of a lead, right? And if they want to continue talking, it's best to keep talking to them while you got them, because sometimes it's hard to get them back. That's for sure. So,
for sure. Yeah.
So break down then for me real quick, what from kind of a top down, what does the organization look like in terms of the different team members and all the people you got on the bus? I obviously know about the junior acquisitions, the senior acquisitions people. You've got a COO that somehow works over the top of them. You've got yourself, and you've probably got some support people around that. But maybe break it down for our listeners, kind of top down, so they can kind of understand how it all feeds each other.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO. I have below that is the COO, and then we have kind of different breaking off from that. We have our TC, office manager. The office manager also does the marketing. So she's in charge of, our list, getting our list skip traced, getting it loaded into an SMS system if we want to do that. Managing, we do SMS. We have a VA that deals with the responses, so she manages that. The TC, we're trying to get her solely on TC, but she bleeds over. I guess both of them bleed over because I have another company that flips houses, and I have a company that has Airbnbs and rentals. And so both those girls manage the flips, they manage contractors, they manage the Airbnb and the rentals. And so they do some of that as well. But then from there, we have the acquisition department, which is we have 2 senior acts. We have 1 junior act. We're hiring, we're going to be bringing on another junior here soon because we want to promote somebody. But the biggest thing for me is I'm trying to remove myself. When I brought on my COO, my goal was to have him help with the systems and help build so that I could focus on I still truly haven't even given up acquisition because to me, that's just like probably one of the last things you want to give up. And so I'm still pretty involved in there. I was on the phones all morning helping the guys out because we have somebody that's sick today. And so my job really is to train them, sit with them, help them, build them up. And then I also jump on the phones quite a bit still. But my goal is by the end of the year to be completely off the phones. I just got to, bring on some more hires and just do a little bit more training. But that's really it for the wholesaling, business.
Now we'll get into what other businesses you've kind of bolted onto it because I think that's interesting. But in terms of, we don't have to give away numbers here because I don't want you to do that necessarily. But in terms of pay structure, right, to keep people motivated, because that's a big factor. And you can set up this umbrella or this hierarchy of people that come on, but retaining them is the key to ultimate business success, right? Having a good culture, having retention of people. What is the pay structure for these people? Not necessarily numbers, but structure that keeps them engaged, involved, and kind of striving for more for the business.
Yeah. So what I did is, I told these guys, I'm going to invest in you. Right now, we're scaling the company. And, when Jeff came on, all I had was this vision, right? And he's leaving a job and he has a family. And I'm sitting here telling him what we're going to do and what we're going to be. And he really had to take a leap of faith. And so, and even with the other guys, I told them, look, I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to give you a base right now. But when we get to the point where we're doing 30 deals a month, there might be a conversation where it's commission only. But until then, I wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable. Right now, we're getting to that point. We're at, anywhere from 10 to 15 deals a month. So I could see us in the near future going to commission only. But to answer your question, so we do a small base. And, I think for anybody looking to do that, I think anywhere from 1,800 to 2,500 would be a fair number. We're right in that ballpark. And then they get 8%. So the seniors get, a small base. And I don't mind sharing, to be honest. So they get 2,300 base and they get 8% commission. The only caveat to that is if a junior act gets a little bit smaller of a base and then they get commission on the deals that they tee up. So if they tee up a deal and then pass it off to senior, they get 3% of that assignment fee. And so that means the senior gets 5%. So it's still 8% overall. So the junior, does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask because it starts to eat into dollars for marketing and, over other overhead and just company profit after a certain point, right? And that certain point is usually over 10%. So that's why I'm asking how that broke up. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think, once we move to commission only, it'll probably be tiered where they get, they bring in X amount of dollars, they'll get, 8%, and then anything over that, maybe 9%, and then so on and so forth. But right now, we just have a base plus that flat 8%. So.
I think that's a smart thing to do. I mean, there's this unicorn floating out there in the real estate investing space that you can hire people on straight commission out of the gate. And it's tough to do and find people that are quality that can grow with you. Because like you said, some of these guys, especially the 44-year-old dude, he's got family and whatnot, and he has to justify his move to his family too, right? And so you have to give them some sort of surety. That's why they're working for you and they don't have their own business, right? And so at a certain point, once that kind of boat planes out, right, a boat kind of takes off and then it takes a while. Once it planes out, you can probably remove that safety blanket, which is the baseline salary, because their commissions are going to far exceed anything that they were making previously. But initially, they really have to have that surety that this is going to work, that they have a check.
Sure.
So I think that was a smart move, even though it probably is a little more stressful on your end starting out that way than a lot of people think that maybe they can get away with.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind, just like anything, it takes a while to build up your pipeline, right? So you bring them on commission only, they may not get a deal for 3 months, and they probably will, but it does take a while for them to build up that pipeline, just like anything. And so I think at the very least, giving them a base or some sort of draw in the beginning is important because it's going to take them time, and you want them to want to show up every day, and it's got to be a win-win for everybody involved,
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of base plus commission. I think that it's the best way that these businesses operate personally.
For sure.
But, So then you've got, that's basically the team. What are the bolt-on businesses that then you're doing on top of this? Because I want to get into the marketing stuff and what you're doing, but I want to kind of clarify. It sounds like you've got an Airbnb business, which is probably taking some of these leads, buying the deals, retaining them, Airbnb-ing them for maximum cash flow, and then you've got maybe a retail arm that's doing some rehabs that then you're retailing yourself. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yep. So we will wholesale. If it's a deal that I want to flip, I'll buy it from the wholesale company. And I think that's important because, everybody's tied to some sort of commission. And so I make sure that I'm still paying an assignment fee. So these guys are getting commissioned on their effort. My COO, his compensation is tied to the profit. So he's going to want, some sort of money to come in for each deal. And so we will wholesale a deal to the flip company, or we'll wholesale it to the holding company. And we will. So I've dabbled in the Airbnb, and to be honest, it's been a great niche for me. Even in Spokane, a lot of people are like, man, why would that work here? But we get about $1,000 a night, or sorry, $100 a night.
I was gonna say 1,000 a night. It's a
yeah,
great
right.
business.
That'd be great. So for example, I have a duplex, and it would rent for $1,300 a side, so $2,600 a month. We bring in anywhere from $4,800 to $5,200 a month, on Airbnb. So it's been a cool little niche. And I have the staff where it's I've never once, I don't even know how Airbnb works. They all manage that for me, and it's pretty hands off. One thing that we're doing that's really cool that I'm really excited about is, everybody talks about your slag, right? Your leads that come in that are maybe more retail, and trying to convert those to a realtor that can send you a referral. And so, just like some of our other marketing channels that we can get into, we've gone through the ringer of trying to build that out and done it the wrong way so many times that we finally really got it figured out. And so I actually opened up a brokerage. I think similar, you have TTM Realty, right? And that's under a brokerage. So I did the same thing with the guy here that's a broker. And so now we have 2 agents that work in our office every single day under that arm. And so we can actually live transfer if a lead comes in.
You took my magic advice. Yeah, you got to have the live transfer. That's the key.
Yep. So that's the thing. So I strongly believe that we'll do anywhere from like 150 to 250,000 next year just in realtor referrals, because we're in 4 markets and we have agents in every single market, and they're absolutely crushing it. And just as like a tip for the audience, these realtors almost all of them have told me that these leads are better than the leads that they're buying. I mean, they're jacked on these leads. They're ecstatic. And so I think that's a good way to pitch it to a realtor that you're working with. I mean, these are people that are calling that want to sell, right? Because we said we want to buy, they say they want to sell, but their house is in great shape. There's no situation calling for them to give up any equity, that they have time to sell, and they should get top dollar. And so we're the first to tell them that. And by the way that we handle the call, we build a lot of trust with them, and we're able to convert a lot of them into retail listings. And so that's going to be a huge, huge business for us next year. We're really excited about.
Yeah, it's cool to hear that you figured that out, because, that was the conclusion that I have come to as well, is that the live transfer agent in the office is a necessary component of that, because these are the ones that are almost the hardest to get back on the phone, right? And then the trust bridge is broken as soon as the phone hangs up as well. So they might as well be random Joe Schmo giving them a call, even if you teed it up for somebody to give them a call on the agent side. It just, for whatever reason, it's hard to kind of piece that conversation back together and get it back to that point where you left it. So that's cool you did that.
Yeah, and you got to find the right agent too, right? So you got to find somebody that has the same mentality that you do. I've gone through a couple different ones. And I've had an agent that's like, well, I called him, they didn't answer. I'm like, well, call him 10 more times. Like, what do you mean? So you have to find the right agent. That's a hustler and a grinder like you. But when you get that synergy, it's huge. I mean, we just teed up a $1.5 million listing over in Seattle area. I mean, great referral fee, right? I mean, it's no extra expense to generate that income. So I'm super excited about that. So that's another little business that we added to it. I mean, it's all kind of centered around the same thing, but it's a little bit separate niche. So
yeah, very cool. That's one that I've tried to figure out for years myself. So it's cool to hear that you ran with it. And I think that's exactly how you should do it for anybody listening. So beyond that though, so let's talk about, you got Airbnb, You've got the rehab business, which is basically taking stuff, buying it at with a cost built in so that the wholesale company can take in some money and you can pay some people. So you're basically paying an assignment fee. And then you've got basically it's a lead, let's call it handoff company, right, to realtors that you're generating some revenue there. Any others that I'm missing at this point?
I mean, that's really it. We can get into some of the marketing stuff. We've built out. So for our marketing, what are the channels that we built out? And it's been about a year of trying to figure it out is cold calling. So I've always hated cold calling. I thought it was just the worst leads, but I kept hearing people having success. So I knew there was a way to do it. I just had to figure it out. And so we tested everything from having, people and, Americans calling full time, from having call centers, calling, overseas. We've gone through the ring on everything. And so after bringing on Nathan, I felt like we figured out what to do, and I kind of gave him some stuff, and I was like, okay, go build this out. And what we ended up doing is we built out a call center in the Philippines, and we're just crushing. And so industry standards, you can expect to get anywhere from 2 to 4 leads in an 8-hour shift from one caller. We get 4 to 8 leads in an 8-hour shift from one caller. And so I had Nathan run some numbers. We've been building it up. Nathan's only been with me for about 4 months. And so we looked at the last 3 months. In September, just in cold calling, we brought in $24,000, which was a 3.2x return. In October, we brought in $82,000, which was 11x return. And in November, set to close, we have $191,000, which is a 25x return on our investment. Wow. So we've been, over the last, 8 years, I've been direct mail heavy, right? And it's like, if I want more leads, I'm just going to send more direct mail. But it's gotten to the point in the industry where doing that, there's a point of diminishing returns. And with direct mail, you really only can expect anywhere from like a 3 to 4, maybe 5x return on your investment. And so with, SMS, cold calling, these other cheaper mediums, you can really get up to a 10, 11x return. And so we were blown away when we pulled those numbers. We were like, wow, we're going to get a 25x return. And so I've been a couple other mentorship groups, and I've kind of told them, what we're doing on the cold call side of things. And we've had a lot of people ask if we can do it for them. And so we're kind of beta testing right now. We're taking a company and we're going to do the cold calling for them and see how it goes. And if it's successful, we'll probably launch something along those lines. We'll see. But we're taking a company right now in Georgia, and we're going to do their leads. But so we're building that out, and Nathan's going to run all that. And with his brain being an engineer and the systems that he's got dialed in, one tip that I'll give on that is we have a manager who manages all the cold callers. He listens to all their calls, and he built out a QA spreadsheet. And so he's listening to every single one of their calls, and he's grading them on every little item that we want them to do and going over and reviewing with them. And so it got to a point where Nathan was managing them, but now he's just managing the manager, and he spends, an hour a week talking to the manager and getting updates and getting reports that the manager is building him. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty dialed in, and it's been so successful for us that I think we can really help out, some other investors. So we're going to see how that goes here in the next couple months.
Yeah, it's an interesting niche. I mean, I know a lot of people have tried dabbling in it. The challenge is just turning it into a continual business, right? And not just a dabble, which it sounds like you've obviously done that. I guess the cold callers and the manager, are they all in the Philippines then?
They are, yep.
Okay.
Yep,
Has
they're
that,
all overseas.
I mean, it obviously hasn't proved problematic, but I'm going to ask you a dumb question. The cultural barrier, the, dialogue, any of that, has it been problematic, or do you try and find people that have maybe more of an American accent over there that are doing the calling?
No, I mean, obviously that's an issue. So the biggest thing for us is, when we're hiring a cold caller, of course we want to screen and make sure that their accent isn't too bad. But I think where a lot of people go wrong is when they hire these people and they have them ask these homeowners so many questions and so much screening that that's where the breakdown is, because this is their second language, so they don't know how to communicate that well. And so we've found that we've changed the script a bunch, and we found that by dumbing the script down and making it very minimal as far as what they have to say and ask, that our return has just gone through the roof. And so in the beginning, when we got that, I think it was a 3x return. At that time, we were having them screen the crap out of these people, right? And they were asking, they were even giving an offer amount, like a range, and making them accept it. And if they would, then they would submit the lead. And so now what we do is we just have them ask, 3 or 4 questions, really, really basic. It's like, do you want to sell? What would you rate your house from a scale of 1 to 10? And then I think the next question is, I'd have to ask Nathan. I think the next question is like, are you really serious about selling anymore? Just curious about an offer. I think that's it. There might be one more, but then they submit the lead. And so from there, we're getting a higher lead volume, and maybe some of those are less, not as good as maybe if you would target them, but less is falling through the cracks by doing that. And then from there, it's just an acquisition training thing where we've trained our guys to really look for motivation and really know. So my guys are getting on the phone with them and getting off the phone within 3 minutes if it's not a real lead, right? And so by doing that, we're able to get less is falling through the cracks. We're getting more leads and we're getting more deals by doing that. So I think that's the biggest issue is people are just having them, screen way too much and having them go back and forth with the seller on the phone when they barely can speak, the language,
Yeah. So let's talk about, let's talk about first the list. What do you what's your best list to cold call? Let's start there, and then we'll follow the life cycle of that lead and the handoff, because I'm curious how that all goes. But what generally are you cold calling? Just everybody that owns property? Because it's a cold calling, you just bang them out, right? So the list, you run out of lists if you have more niche lists. So what do those lists look like? What are you generally going after?
Yeah, so we'll pull, all the lists that you can think about pulling from list source. So absentee owner, owner rock, unknown equity, right? A lot of people know that list. Even negative equity, a lot of people don't know that that's a really good list you can pull, and less people are pulling that, right? And so we'll call those, but it's just all those lists you can think of. We're really heavy in driving for dollars.
All right, guys, I want to take a minute here to talk with you about our Driving for Dollars app. Our Driving for Dollars app is in the iTunes Store. It's in the Google Play Store. It's free to download, and you get a 5-property free trial once you do. Now, if you like what you see and you play around with the app and you're like, you know what, I could use this in my business, which you should. It's the most cost-effective Driving for Dollars app in the market by far. But there's 2 $20 plans that are available right now. So you can get up to 100 skip traces for $20, or you can get unlimited list building for up to $20. And you and your team can use the app. You can create these lists and it'll skip trace them on the fly, or you can just create an unlimited number of properties on a list that then you can skip trace outside the app. We can help you with that, or you can do it on your own, and then you can market to those properties indefinitely, and you've got a tremendous asset for your business. Now, we do a ton of Driving for Dollars. I would say a good 90% of the lists that we market are purely Driving for Dollars, and then we do some layering on top of that, of course, if we have other lists, to see if our Driving for Dollars leads fall on these other lists, and then we also do some layering with the way that we market to them, which is why the app skip traces for you as well and gives you all kinds of information like email address, phone number, all kinds of stuff. So if you have not already, make sure you go to the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store, depending on whether or not you have an iPhone or an Android phone. Go download the Driving for Dollars app. It's free to download. You get a 5-property free trial. Give it a test drive. See if you like it. And if you do, we have plans starting at just $20 a month. So go download it today.
I have probably 12,000 leads in Driving for Dollars, but obviously in our virtual markets, we don't have that, right? And so, and then you have your niche list. So you can pull the probate, the tax defaults, divorce, inheritance. So we do all those as well. And then you script trace them. You're getting up to 10 numbers per person. So you're calling all those. So basically every list you can think of, we're calling. And then what was your next question? So the process
Yeah. So like they take it in, right? They have the basic rating questions to kind of determine the viability of the lead, right? And so let's say they make it through the question. Well, let's say they don't, right? Let's say they don't make it through the viability of leads questions that are set up to kind of validate it as a quality lead. Does it just go to dead then? Do you just X them off and they don't call them again? Is that the first thing that gets done?
Yeah. So it's once we get those lists and we skip trace them, we upload them into the dialer, right? And so our callers are calling out of the dialer. Each lead, once they call, they're going to dispo it and they're going to say yes, no, do not call, whatever, right? So if it's a no, they'll hit that no button. It'll remove it from the list within the dialer, and then they'll move on to the next one, right? So Gotcha. if it's a yes, then they will hit yes, and they have a web form that's tied into our CRM. So they'll put the name, the answers to our questions, the address, the phone number, and they'll submit the web form. It'll go into our CRM as a new untouched lead. And that's when our seniors will reach out to them. So every day we're getting probably, 30 to 40 cold call leads, and they're going through the new untouched every day, calling those people back and going through the process with them.
Gotcha. So those aren't live transfer, then they actually have to call them back.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Has that been a challenge there, or has it been pretty good in terms of percentage of people that you can get back on the phone that make it through the first checkbox there with the cold callers? Or is that something you're continually trying to improve?
We're always trying to improve it. It's definitely a challenge. I'd say it's, we're probably 60-40 in getting them to answer. One thing that we do is we try to be, we changed our CRM so that if somebody wants a specific time to be called back, the seniors will go in and they'll read that. And if it's not right now, they have some buttons and some stuff that they can press to where, at 4 o'clock, they know to call that lead back. And by doing that, we used to just call them back right now, no matter what, because it just got kind of annoying. Like, it's hard to track when everybody wants to be called back until we built that out. But by doing that, we're building more credibility and more trust, right? So if somebody wants to be called back at 4 and we actually call them back at 4, that's the first impression, right? Is okay, these guys are, they're doing what they say they're going to do. They're a little bit more credible. So it's helped us a ton in doing that.
Yeah, it's hard to do it at scale. I mean, that's one thing that we pride ourselves on doing, but we don't have near as much volume going through as you guys do. So it's definitely much harder when you've got 8,000 balls in the air versus, 8, let's call it. But.
Yeah. And that's when your systems, come into play, and thankfully I have an engineer that can build all that out for me. So
for sure. Yeah. That's where, when you say he's better than you could ever be, that would be a prime example, right? So
100%. Yeah.
I need a guy like that. That's for sure. On my ideas, I need the guy that's the detailed guy like that, which, Dan obviously is on one side, but I could use another one. That's for sure, as we all could. Okay. So lists pretty much everything then. With this kind of volume, you pretty much have to be hitting everything. You're kind of an equal opportunity employer, we'll call it, in terms of the marketing to the lists. Is there anything crazy or different? Negative equity sounds like kind of a wild list. What's the point of that one? To generate short sales potentially, or is it just maybe there's data on there that is incorrect and just people are not marketing because it doesn't fall in the other buckets?
Exactly. Like the data just doesn't always correct. So we're getting deals, that there's equity there, So and nobody's marketing to them, right? Because no one thinks that there's any equity there.
Yeah, I wouldn't, and I'm assuming that is a filter in list source then too, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm extracting some good stuff from you, so sorry if you didn't want to share.
Good stuff, man. Love it.
So, all right. So let's talk about different marketing channels. Obviously, cold calling, you would say is that the main driver of the business at this point, or are you still direct mail heavy?
Up until last 30 days, we were really direct mail heavy. We've tried, RVM. I really didn't like it. We've tried it. We've gotten away from it. We've gotten back to it. We've cut it off. And I have to be honest, I'm probably a glutton for punishment because I'm telling the guys I want to try it again, but we're going to do it a little bit differently this time around. We're going to get a little bit more targeted with the list that we do. We're not just going to do it to everybody because that was what I was doing before, and it was just brutal. But and so we were real direct mail heavy. We're cutting that out big time. We're only going to be mailing to certain lists. And we're, really nail that down to where because before I was spending up to 40 grand a month just on direct mail, it was crazy. And so we'll be probably, 10, 15 grand now a month, and we'll probably get better results, from what we're going to do. And then, so we'll get back doing RVM. We're going to get really nailed down on what we're going to do with that though. SMS. So that's another channel where I always hated SMS, but I knew that people were doing really well with it. And so we've been testing different things, and we've really been looking at our response rate. And up until the last 2 weeks, we really figured out what we're doing wrong with it. And so I think we're going to really scale that. I'm super excited to see what happens with that because we honestly started yesterday and the new strategy that we're doing with it. And I'm happy to share a little bit with that too. But and we've already seen, yesterday we had 8 leads pushed to our act department, where before, it was we were lucky if we can get 1 lead a day. And so I think that's going to be huge for us as well.
What do you think the difference in doing it this time is, or what's the little pivot that you made that's starting to make it more successful? Because I have a love-hate relationship with text marketing too. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
So what we realized is with the cold calling, we were having a VA screen these and go back and forth before they finally pushed it. And we have a VA doing the same thing with their SMS, and they would even hit them with the range, right? And, go through back and forth. And now what we're having them do is the second that the VA finds out that it's not someone telling us, hey, kick rocks, you're a, piece of shit, all this stuff you get, right, from SMS.
And you do. People, there's some texting cowboys out there, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, everybody's tough through SMS, but so they're pushing it through our act department a lot sooner now. And then obviously, like the technical things, in the beginning, we didn't realize that, you need to change your SMS numbers, the ones you're sending them from, really frequently. I was going a month, 2 months without changing them. Now we do it almost every new campaign because the carriers will start to block it. And then the third thing is we no longer say, hey, first name, I'm interested in buying your place at site address, right? We don't say that at all because the carriers are picking those things up and they're blocking them. And so all we say, so our message that went out Monday was something that was, hey, did you get the letter I sent you? ? And then everyone is inevitably going to say, what letter, who is this? And then we have an automatic response our VA can send that says, oh, sorry, I sent you a letter to see if you're interested in selling your property. So that's the second text message, not the first. So we don't have to worry about the carriers blocking us. And then also it's such a generic message that it's gonna get such a good response rate, right? Because everyone's like, what do you mean, And so those little tweaks we made, I'm sharing quite a bit there. So hopefully you guys will, implement that because it's going to be pretty huge in our business. And so we'll see how that we're testing.
That's great. It's the same concept that we apply with our email marketing, which is the 8-word email, which, this guy that's much smarter than me in the world of marketing created. And the reason that he created that is because it's so vague that it, you get an email like that, it even gets me to respond when I'm like the most pessimistic email responder on the planet, right? I'm like garbage, right? But it triggers something in people that they have to respond. And that texting that you're doing is, even shorter probably than 8 words, but it makes people respond, even if they would never respond otherwise to anything else. They just feel this trigger and need to respond. So I think that's probably why it's working well for you, which is cool. RVMs, I'm curious, do you guys start with RVMs or do you follow another marketing channel with RVMs when you're doing them or as you plan to do them moving forward?
We just do everything, at the same time. So It's not like we send them a letter and then we RVM that's like, hey, did you get my letter? We're sending them, we're hitting them with on all directions all at once. But the difference with RVM is, what I'm going to do for me, I don't know that this will work for everybody or everybody should do this, is just that I'm only going to RVM very, very targeted list. And probably what I'm going to do is list stack. And the ones that are, on multiple lists are probably the only ones that I'm going to RVM. And then, of course, I think RVM, a good way to use it too, is maybe just in your follow-up, and the leads that are already in your system.
I was going to just say that because that's what we start. We don't have near the staff that you do on the follow-up side, but we loaded in all the leads from last month into RVM, which seems like a much better use of RVM because you've already made that touch and that connection, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're going to test that out. So how did that work for you? Did you get kind of a good response?
Yeah, we got callbacks immediately from people that, and we're kind of going through it and giving each lead a litmus test in terms of like, was there any opportunity there? Could something change that, would cause them to have a different price or expectation? If they were just out of this world on what they wanted, there's no point in talking to somebody again, a month later. But we've got, people loaded in all the way back from the beginning of the year. And there was a couple that, just people that Chris desperately doesn't want to talk to again that we removed from the list. But for the most part, it was pretty much send it out and bam, we got responses right away because they're warm leads. Essentially, we're not trying to solicit cold traffic. So it's working well.
Love it.
So then basically let's talk about moving forward then, because you've got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of this is fairly new to the last year. Sounds like you got a lot of great team members. Where do you want to continue the growth, or do you think you have the framework set up now to just kind of continue building volume within that?
Yeah, we're going to build out volume. I really think, I think next year we can be just in the wholesale division, a $4 or $5 million company at the pace that we're going, because every single month we're doing more. We put up like 270 last month just in wholesale revenue. And so I want to build that out, and I want to get it to be a little bit more functional without me being very, so much involved. My goal is to get somebody promoted into my act department to be the act manager, to do the training, the hiring, that kind of stuff. Really for me, what I'm really passionate about and what I love is multifamily and commercial. I want to own, assets. I want to build that rental income. And so I've been wanting to do it and been saying I'm going to do it for so long, but it's just so hard to give up the wholesale, right? Because that's my core and that's how we eat. And so I was like, okay, let's build this out. Let's get it a little bit more systemized where I'm not so involved. And then, my real goal is by the beginning of, next year, January, I'm going to start building out the channels to start bringing in, multifamily leads into the act department. And so hopefully here in the next couple months, I can start working on building that out. And then, of course, just creating more opportunities for my team. I mean, everybody here is so sharp that they kind of push me to grow and to do more so that I can offer them more and more income opportunities. So
I think that's a key that you just said there is you've got people that are kind of almost pulling you along every day versus you pulling
100%.
them, because if you're the top guy and you're pulling everybody else, it gets exhausting after a while. And so I think a lot of that credit goes to just the fact that you hired the right people, to do that.
When and like you said before, I've said this, it's like when you hire people that are just as good as you, if not better than you at a certain job, your business, it's just night and day what can happen, in your company. Things are getting done where it's like you can fail, but you have other people that are pushing the ball along, just as much as you. And so you have to show up every day because, there's 6 families right now that depend on this business. It's not just me anymore. I don't get to just, screw off anymore. And so it pushes me and drives me to be better and do more.
Well, I got a question for you then, because this is one that I get a lot from people, because you've now transitioned over into business owner chair, right? Not just investor chair, but business owner chair. How were you able to get over the fear of having other people's livelihood be your responsibility, or have you?
I would say I have. I feel like I've proven to myself that, this is the real deal and we can really build something. But to be honest, you just have to, we say this here in the office, and it's like, you just have to face the storm. You are going to take risk, and you have to be able to deal with that. And so for me, like, if you're going to do it, you have to go all in. And I made that decision last year. Like, okay, I'm going all in and I'm going to do this. And, at the end of the day, if you show up every single day and you do the right things, you're going to be successful. And if you're not, there's a reason why that maybe is out of your control. And so you have to be willing to take that risk and move forward. And so I don't know. It's tough to answer that question. I think for me, I'm just, I'm willing to take the risk. And for me, it's like failure isn't the end all, right? Like if you fail, it's just another way for you to not do something and to get a little bit better at something. And so I knew that if I tried to scale this, I was going to learn a ton. I mean, the amount of, who I am now versus who I was last April is like night and day. And so I knew if I failed, I was going to be able to pick myself back up and build something even better than I ever thought, because I had learned so much of the process.
Well, I'll say this, because we've known each other for a good while now. I would say the version of you a year ago versus now is the most different that it's been since I've known you. So in a good way, right? So I think that you're right. And that was a really good answer. I think what you've learned, just the personal growth that you've had through this process, has been huge.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, one thing that I've found is I look at people that are super successful and in business, and they kind of have their life together in other areas, whether it's, their health, spiritually, if you're religious, I'm not, that kind of person, but just whatever it is, they have stuff together in every aspect of their life. And so that's something that I've really tried to build, because you can will yourself to, relative success by just having that grind and, the want, but to get to a certain high level, you have to have other aspects of your life together, right? So we're at 7 figures and we're able to get there by just like the will of wanting it. But in order to get to 10 figures, I've realized I have to really have stuff in order, and we can't just be doing this guesswork and, waking up whenever I want to wake up. I need to have structure. And so that's the next phase of my life, is really trying to get all that stuff together and run a tidy ship, not only in the business, but in my personal life too. So.
How old are you now?
29.
I think you got plenty of time. I'm facing 40 here in a month. So you got plenty of room to run.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, last question then. What markets are you operating in right now, and do you see that changing?
Yeah, so we're in Spokane, obviously, and then we're in North Idaho, which is like Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Hayden, that area. And then we're also in Pierce County and King County. And one thing that I didn't touch on is we are building out like the JV division of our business. Everyone is really acquisition heavy, and we are too, but we're really dispositions heavy too. Some of the stuff that we do, the strategies that we do to sell our deals, a wholesaler could push out the same deal that we push out, and I can pretty much guarantee you we're going to sell it for 10, 15, 20 grand more because of the stuff that we do. And so because of that, we've had wholesalers that couldn't sell their deals that have brought us their deals, and we've been able to sell them. We just did 3 in the last 30 days, deals that they couldn't sell that we were for a really good assignment fee. And so we're kind of building that out. So if you are in those markets, we'd love to work with you. But to answer your question, we're definitely going to be adding more markets. We're going to be, we're looking at some of the big MSAs, like obviously Las Vegas, Phoenix. But I really also do like, towns like Spokane where we can just dominate because there isn't that much competition. So surrounding areas like, Washington State, there's like the Tri-Cities area, Yakima. We're looking at those, but I think right now we're going to look into larger MSAs to go into our next few markets. So,
does Elliot know you're going to take over Tri-Cities?
I told him, yeah. He's like, all right, I'm taking over Spokane. I said, okay, I bet.
That's funny. Real quick then, just on the follow-up on disposing of or the disposition of other people's wholesale deals, what do you think is the biggest driver in your ability to kind of maybe move those for more money? Just better connections, let's call it different buyer types, things like that?
Yeah, so we make a push every single day to build our buyers list. I mean, our buyers list is ridiculously huge. But so we have buyers that are not your, like, me or you, right? We're just, we need the best deals, and we have just kind of your one-off or two-off buyers. But the biggest thing I think is the way that we dispo deals. If you're selling a flip, right, you're not going to take the first offer. If you have potential other offers coming in, right? So everybody who has a wholesale deal, they'll push it out for $100 grand, and their buddy's going to call them and go, here's $100 grand, I want the deal. And we don't do that anymore. So we tell people, hey, we're accepting offers over the next 24 hours. Go ahead and submit your highest and best offer, and let us know if you have a contingency that you need to do a walkthrough. So we have a web form in our email blast or SMS blast where they can click and submit an offer, and it goes into our CRM, and then we'll go through those and call everybody back. And so by doing that, I mean, we've made an extra, probably for sure an extra 6 figures by selling deals over what we push them out at, because they're getting bid out.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. All right, now true last question. Does any of this change as you look forward, as we head into what inevitably will be a different part of the market cycle? Or do you have contingency plan in place for different parts of the business? Or do you think it even matters?
It's tough. Obviously, I haven't been around in a market shift, right? So I came in 2012, and that was kind of on the run up. So everything that I have is really theory, right? But obviously, strategies are going to change. The way that we dispo deals now is going to be a little bit different than the way we do it when the market shifts. Because right now, I mean, just because you're a buyer, right? Everybody's a buyer. My barber's a buyer. Everybody's flipping houses. Like, there's no value by being a buyer. But in 2008, if you were a buyer, like a wholesaler, you're bringing a lot of value because everybody left the market. So strategies will shift, and even on the acquisition side, strategies are going to shift. Maybe we'll do more sub-2 deals, more seller finance deals. I'm not really sure, but also too, I mean, we're wholesaling. It's tough. I'm curious what your opinion is. I mean, I think of course we're going to see a dip because it's this market cycles. That's what happens. But economically, fundamentally, Spokane is just so strong. Even Pierce, some of our other markets, Coeur d'Alene, they're all economically and fundamentally so strong with the amount of people that are moving there, the amount of companies that are moving there. So I think nationally, of course, we're going to see something, but real estate is so local that I just question how bad it's going to be, some of the markets that way.
Yeah, your price points are low enough there that I just don't see much compression happening. The other thing that I've really thought a lot about is that, in the last go around, the lending side of the business completely disappeared, right? And so now there's a lot more asset-based, portfolio-based lending that's in place that won't get crushed with this next go around, because it's not going to be a financial world catastrophe or the financial industry catastrophe that then ruins everything else, right? And so as long as those lending institutions remain, I just think the people you sell to are going to differ a little bit, and you're going to sell to people that are just stockpiling assets versus trying to turn and burn assets. So you just will kind of change the direction of who it is that you're targeting to sell to a little bit, and that'll probably be your biggest protection mechanism. That would be my thoughts anyway, because it'll be different. I mean, last time was just such a catastrophic time that basically washed out everybody, with the exception of a few people just holding on by their, best they can, like us. But it'll be different, but it'll be interesting. I think you're right, though. I think if you're operating mainly in Spokane and Idaho and whatnot, there just isn't a whole lot of downfall potentially there, because you're already like one of the cheapest places to live, right? So how far can a place like that fall? And that's just
right.
Kind of sense. So
for sure. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, but I was going to add to that, but
we'll leave it at that. How about that?
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, man. Well, hey, I think I've taken enough of your time. I've got you to pull back the curtain enough. I will compliment you and say it's really amazing what you've built out basically in the last, call it, year and a half, 2 years, right? I mean, that's when this big transformation in terms of the size of the company, your team members, all the different arms of it have kind of been put together. You had the baseline skill set before, but you really kind of went from investor to business owner over the last 18 months. And I definitely applaud you for it, because you've done a fantastic job.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And like I said, that seed that you planted, 6 years ago when you took me under your wings, and then obviously I've been a part of the Deal Finders Academy for all these 6 years, so I've got to be a part of that and learn, within that, and get to meet everybody in there. That's also helped shape me and shared stuff with me that's changed my business. So.
All right, guys, I want to take a quick second here to take a break from the show and talk to you about our Deal Finders Academy, or the DFA as I often refer to it. Now, it's the original online mastermind group in this space that we call real estate investing. We started it about 5.5 years ago, and we've still got a ton of our original members from 5.5 years ago, which has to say something, right? But at its core, it's an amazing group of people that are from all over the country that are doing this business every single day. You get question and answer, you get advice, you can throw up a scenario, and you can get 5, 10, 15, 20 people giving you advice on how to handle it, just like that, almost instantaneously. It's an amazing resource to be able to have. It's a fantastic community. We've got a ton of great people. I've made so many great friendships from having the DFA. I can't even count how many, honestly. And I know many other people feel the same way. So if you are interested in joining us, it's a very, very inexpensive mastermind group to be a part of. It's only $199 a month. There's no contracts. And the best part is we don't stack people on top of each other. So that means the competitive advantages remain competitive advantages, and you can use them in your exact marketplace. So we get a kind of a detailed rundown of exactly where it is that you're going to operate, and that way we don't allow people to come into the group that are going to operate in that exact same area, and then that way everybody can flourish that much more. So there aren't many other groups out there that do that. We've remained very committed to keeping an exclusive group and making sure that all those competitive advantages benefit those people that are in the DFA. So we would love to have you as a part of it. We're trying to add some more people to those areas that we have space. So reach out to us today. Go to the dealfindersacademy.com. From there, all you got to do is book a call with Dan. He'll chat with you. We'll see if we have space and if it's a good fit. And if it is, we'd love to make you a part of our DFA mastermind group.
I appreciate everything that you've done for me, and I look forward to the relationship that we'll have throughout the next couple of years and see how business goes for both of us.
For sure. Well, I'm excited to see where this goes for you. And I'm sure everybody listening got a lot of, probably more than you wanted to say, but I'm sure they got a lot of great info out of you. So I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Of course. Thanks, man.
All right. What did you guys think about that? pretty good show. That was my Larry David impression for those of you guys that watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. I would say one of our better interviews in a long time. A lot of very valuable information, a lot of little nuggets sprinkled within there from how they handle lead flow to different lists that they market. One list that I had not heard of that people are apparently marketing to is the negative equity list, so that's an interesting one. And just all kinds of really cool stuff on kind of how it all works and how much success he's had with cold calling, which I know a lot of people have tried to tackle that cold calling mountain recently or over the past year, and some have had success, some have not. You know, we've had some really good people on the show. One that particularly that comes to mind is Mr. David Martinez, who is a cold calling beast. But he does it himself, whereas Danny now has, basically a calling floor in the Philippines that does it for him. And they've really worked out all the kinks, and they got this machine humming along. So really cool stuff. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this interview. I will tell you this. If you want to learn more about Danny's cold calling or you just want to connect with him, reach out to him on Facebook, friend him, message him, whatever you want to do. I asked if that would be the best way for people to contact him, and he said absolutely. So if you're not friends with Danny already on Facebook, make sure you send him a friend request. He's friends with me, so you'll be able to see that. And if you'd like to, you can DM him from there and send him a direct message and see what's going on, or if you want to pick his brain, or if you want to find out more information about how it is that he runs his marketing machine and ultimately his business. So that's this week's show. Before I leave, I do have a closing success quote. I felt like it was necessary on this one, and I found a quote that I really like. And this week's quote, one that probably applies to Danny as well as myself, and many of you guys out there in listener land who are on the climb, we'll call it, right? So the quote is by apparently a guy named Andy Rooney, and it says, "Everyone wants to live on top of the mountain, but all of the happiness and growth occurs while you're climbing it." Think about that, huh? It's about the journey, folks. That's what it's about. Once you get to the top, it's not as revered of a place as you might think in your mind when you're on your way there. Once you get there, and it's what's next, right? So remember that. The happiness and growth occurs while you're climbing it, not when you're at the top. All right, folks, that wraps up episode 290, the Real Dealz podcast. Hopefully you guys liked it or loved it. I know I really enjoyed this one. I'll see you guys next week.